Joseph Burrus. On Halloween night, in 1990, a small crowd gathered in a Fresno, California parking lot to witness what was billed as a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle. Joseph "Amazing Joe" Burrus, a 32-year-old self-taught magician and drug rehab counselor, stood beside a clear plexiglass coffin, grinning with the confidence of a man about to make history. His goal? To outdo his childhood idol, Harry Houdini, by surviving a live burial beneath 7 tons of wet cement and dirt, a feat even Houdini never attempted. Burrus had pulled off a similar stunt the year before, buried only under dirt. But this time, the stakes were dramatically higher. His coffin, built by hand, had never been tested under such pressure. There were no engineers, no professional escape crew, just Joe, a few assistants, and an eager audience. Dressed in a tuxedo and shackled, Burrus climbed into the box. He gave a final wave before the lid was sealed shut. Then, a cement truck began pouring its contents on top. Within seconds, the unreinforced coffin began to crack. Moments later, it collapsed entirely under the crushing weight. The audience, at first unaware, believed it was part of the show. But as minutes ticked by with no sign of movement, concern turned to horror. Rescue crews rushed in, digging frantically, but it was far too late. Joseph Burrus was dead, crushed before he even had a chance to escape. What was meant to be his grandest illusion became his final act. Karl Wallenda. On March 22, 1978, Karl Wallenda, founder and fearless leader of the legendary Flying Wallendas, stood on a hotel rooftop in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He was 73 years old, but still determined to prove that age had not dulled his daring. Below him, a wire stretched across 2 towers of the Condado Plaza Hotel, 121 feet apart, suspended 75 feet above the concrete. No nets, no safety harness. Just Karl, the wind, and a lifetime of showmanship behind him. Crowds had gathered below, staring upward in awe. Television cameras rolled, broadcasting the stunt live. Karl took his first steps, poised and deliberate, balancing with the kind of grace only decades of death-defying performances could produce. But something was wrong. The winds were strong. Gusts had been hitting 30 miles per hour all day, and the rigging hadn't been properly secured. As he reached the halfway point, his body wavered. He adjusted. Then a stronger gust hit. Karl tried to recover, knees bending, pole tilting. For a moment, he held on, just long enough for the crowd to gasp in unison. Then he fell. It was a horrifying drop, and it ended with a sickening impact. Medics rushed in, but there was nothing to be done. The man who had danced on wires above city streets, who had led his family in skywalks around the world, had met his end not from a lack of skill, but from the sky itself turning against him. His final fall was seen live by thousands and remembered forever. Kun Liu. In the fall of 2011, the cast and crew of The Expendables 2 gathered in Bulgaria to film one of the film's most high-octane sequences, a complex action scene involving speedboats, gunfire, and a massive explosion. Among the stunt team was Kun Liu, a 26-year-old martial artist and performer known for his precision and discipline. For Kun, this project wasn't just another job, it was a career-defining opportunity to work alongside some of the biggest action legends in cinema history. The setup was intense but rehearsed. The stunt called for 2 men aboard a rubber boat to speed across a reservoir near the Ognjanovo Dam, while timed charges detonated around them. The explosives were designed to simulate chaos without causing it. But something went wrong. As the cameras rolled, a blast triggered prematurely. The explosion was stronger than anticipated and far closer to the boat than it should have been. In an instant, the scene turned deadly. Kun Liu was struck by shrapnel and thrown into the water. Emergency responders rushed to the site, but his injuries were catastrophic. He was pronounced dead shortly after. Another stuntman on the boat, seriously injured, barely survived. The production halted. Investigations followed. The scene, once meant to thrill, was quietly rewritten to reduce risk. Kun's name never made the marquee, but within the stunt community, his loss sent shockwaves. A harsh reminder that even in fiction, danger is real. Chung Ling Soo. On March 23, 1918, the packed crowd at London's Wood Green Empire Theatre waited in breathless anticipation. Chung Ling Soo, the world-renowned magician with an air of Eastern mystery, was preparing to perform one of his signature illusions, the bullet catch. It was a trick that had mesmerized audiences for years. Members of the crowd would load marked bullets into a rifle, fire it directly at the magician, and he would catch the bullet, seemingly unharmed, either in his teeth or on a metal plate, a spectacle of danger, an illusion of invincibility. But Chung Ling Soo wasn't Chinese. His real name was William Ellsworth Robinson, a New Yorker who had spent his career adopting a fabricated identity to elevate his stage persona. And behind the scenes, the bullet catch was no magic. It relied on careful sleight of hand and modified firearms. Except that night, one of the guns misfired. The gun, which had not been properly cleaned or maintained, allowed a live round to discharge. The illusion failed. The bullet hit Robinson in the chest. He collapsed on stage, blood soaking through his robe. For the first time in his career, he broke character. Speaking in English, shocking the crowd who believed him to be a silent, mystical figure, he gasped, "Oh my God, something's happened." He died the next day in a hospital. The man who lived by illusion was finally undone by the reality he'd hidden behind. Sam Patch. In the fall of 1829, Sam Patch stood on the edge of American folklore and a literal ledge above Niagara Falls. Known as the Yankee Leaper, Patch had built his fame on death-defying jumps from dizzying heights. He wasn't a showman in costume or a magician with tricks. He was a mill worker with grit, a love of danger, and a belief that some things can be done as well as others. His leap from Niagara was legendary, a plunge into roaring chaos that left spectators stunned when he emerged alive, arms raised in triumph. But one leap was never enough for Sam. A few weeks later, he planned his next stunt, a 125-foot dive into the Genesee River at Rochester, New York. Bigger, higher, riskier. On November 6th, with thousands watching, he jumped. The crowd gasped, expecting the same miracle they'd seen at Niagara. But this time, Sam didn't resurface. For days, searchers scoured the riverbanks. Rumors spread. Had he escaped? Was it a stunt within a stunt? But reality came crashing in when his body was found frozen beneath the ice, miles downstream. The river had claimed him. Sam Patch died chasing his legend. He wasn't just testing nature, he was testing fate. And when he pushed it one step too far, fate pushed back. Ken Carter. Ken Carter wasn't just chasing speed, he was chasing immortality. Dubbed the Mad Canadian, he had one goal: to make history by jumping a rocket-powered Lincoln Continental across the St. Lawrence River. It was the kind of stunt that didn't just flirt with danger, it gave it a front-row seat. Plans were grand, sponsors lined up, but the jump was plagued with delays. Bad weather, technical issues, financial setbacks. Year after year, it was pushed back, each time drawing more media attention and skepticism. By 1983, the St. Lawrence stunt remained unrealized, but Carter's thirst for spectacle hadn't faded. At Ontario's Peterborough Motor Speedway, he attempted a new rocket car jump, a 200-foot leap over a field of cars using a homemade rocket vehicle. This time, there were no delays, no second chances. The car roared down the track, flames and smoke trailing behind it, and launched into the air. For a moment, it looked like it might work, but Carter had miscalculated. The car overshot the landing ramp by nearly 100 feet, soaring too far and too fast. It nosedived into the dirt past the ramp and exploded on impact. The crowd fell silent. When rescuers reached the wreckage, Carter was already gone. Ken Carter died doing what he loved, chasing the impossible. But in trying to launch himself into legend, he instead became a tragic reminder that gravity always gets the last word. Sarah Guyard-Guillot. On the evening of June 29, 2013, the dazzling stage of Ka by Cirque du Soleil at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas was alive with light, music, and gravity-defying spectacle. Among the performers was Sarah Guyard-Guillot, a seasoned French acrobat and aerialist with over 20 years of experience. Known for her elegance in the air, she was a mother, a mentor, and a rising star in the world's most prestigious circus. The audience watched in awe as Sarah ascended high above the stage during the climactic battle scene, suspended by a harness in a complex aerial sequence that was both beautiful and dangerous. Then, something went terribly wrong. As she moved upward, her harness reportedly detached or failed, and in an instant, Sarah plummeted more than 90 feet into a pit below the stage, completely out of sight from the audience. At first, many thought it was part of the show. The music continued. The performers froze. Then came the screams. The show was halted immediately, but the damage had already been done. Paramedics arrived quickly, but Sarah was pronounced dead shortly after. She became the first performer in Cirque du Soleil's history to die during a live performance. Her death sent shockwaves through the entertainment world, leading to a full investigation and changes in safety protocols. But for those who witnessed it, the moment was unforgettable, the night when real tragedy fell from the sky. Jessica Dubroff. On a rainy morning in April 1996, the small town of Cheyenne, Wyoming, became the backdrop for a heartbreaking tragedy. Jessica Dubroff, a 7-year-old girl with a bright smile and big dreams, was strapped into the cockpit of a small Cessna 177. Beside her sat her flight instructor, Joe Reed, and in the back seat, her father, Lloyd Dubroff. Jessica had captured national attention as she attempted to become the youngest person to fly across the United States, a journey promoted heavily in the media as a symbol of youthful ambition. But ambition met reality on that runway. As the plane rolled down the wet tarmac, rain lashed against the windshield and heavy crosswinds pushed hard against the aircraft. Despite deteriorating conditions, the pressure to maintain the media schedule was intense. Joe Reed pushed forward with takeoff. Moments after lifting off, the Cessna climbed sharply, then stalled. Witnesses said the plane wobbled in the air, barely clearing rooftops before it nosedived into the ground just 1 mile from the airport. The impact was fatal. All three, Jessica, her father, and her instructor, were killed instantly. The crash sparked nationwide outrage and grief. Critics condemned the stunt as reckless exploitation. Jessica's death prompted new regulations to prevent children from being involved in similar record attempts. She never finished her journey, but the consequences of her final flight still echo in aviation law today.